What's going on, everybody? My name is Jake, and welcome back to another UFC picks and predictions preview show. For this week, we are at UFC Houston, Strickland versus Hernandez. I'm really excited for this. It's been, a week since the last UFC event, or 2 weeks since they had an off week after Oliveira and Bautista. So no fights last Saturday. I put out that video with my, early leans. There was some fights that came out that I had a pretty definitive, prediction on already. And then there were some others where I wasn't entirely sure and, had to let some more time pass, do some more research before coming to my actual picks. And for the most part, the card is in 2 days. I'm recording this on Thursday, probably put it out Friday morning. So the card will be the next day. I've got pretty much all my bets placed. I'm just waiting on some fight props to open for the Jacoby Smith and Josiah Harrell fight that, we'll break down later. The books I use still don't have fight props on it. I'm sure there's other, maybe lesser known books that have fight props for them. So other than that fight, I've got all my bets in. So, just like last time with Bautista and Oliveira, I'll give you my picks, what I'm betting on, the odds I got it at. And this time I'll kind of break it down to a little bit more of which fights I'll have more stakes on others. That way it gives kind of a clear picture that, I kind of explained in the last video. I had a fight with Dustin Jacoby and Julius Walker where I had a couple different picks, but the stakes were lower. Whereas I had other fights like Kyoji Horiguchi where I didn't have that many picks, but my confidence and my stakes in that were much higher. So I'll kind of explain that a little bit more in detail in this. And so I'll do this at the start of every video, but we'll do a quick ROI recap right up in the corner there. I'll have the last 3 cards, which fittingly is the only 3 cards so far this year. So little ROI recap, again, just to be transparent and hold myself accountable. That way you guys know I'm being honest. I'm not capping anything. And also with that, I'm going to housekeep and say this every single video. This is not gambling advice. If you're not familiar, not confident with what any of these picks are or the sport in general, do not feel like what I'm doing is something you should use to place your hard-earned money on. Do with whatever you are comfortable with your own money. And yeah, like I said, I'm not ever going to claim to be like a, expert or, an elite picker by any means. I'm off to a good start this year. But inevitably, there are going to be losing cards and there's going to be, cold streaks. That's just the nature of sports betting. And again, I've kind of said there's people out there that have these ridiculous records, like they're 50-1 or, they have a 500% ROI. And, maybe that's true on one card or over the course of 2 weeks, but over the course of a lifetime, probably not. So, I'd say that for the most part, the cappers and the bettors that I follow in the MMA space are trustworthy, but I'm just more so saying that as, again, I'm not a gambling expert. I'm going to share this with whatever I'm comfortable betting on and for transparency purposes, but don't feel like you need to use my picks as your own. If you agree with me and have maybe the same bets, that's great. We can ride together. If you disagree, may the better man win, okay? So anyway, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the card here on UFC Fight Night Houston. So again, I did an early leans video, so some of these I'll have pretty short breakdowns because my opinions haven't really changed at all. This is kind of one of them. The first card is fittingly the biggest favorite on the card, Carly Judice against Juliana Miller. Right now, Carly Judice, I believe, is a minus 900 favorite. I think it's crawled all the way up there on FanDuel. I'm going to have a couple different apps pulled up here to check odds as well as the odds of what I got it at. If I go to FanDuel, yeah, she's minus 900 on FanDuel, which is absolutely ridiculous. So when this breakdown first came out, I was like, yeah, this is going to be one of my bigger cash cows. And she initially opened at minus 500, which is still really wide, especially for women's MMA. But at least you can use that with, like, you could parlay a minus 225 or minus 200 odds leg with that and get close to even money. At minus 900, you're not getting very much value at it. So unless you had jumped on it early like I had, no real point to give her as a parlay piece here. Now, I think those odds are justified. I think she's going to run through Juliana Miller. The striking disparity is just levels. I mean, Juliana Miller is a grappler at heart. She does not have very good striking. She's an Ultimate Fighter winner, but like, is that really a flex nowadays in today's UFC? I mean, I just don't think she's very good, especially not in the striking game. And Carly Giudice is a really, really solid, not even solid, she's a really, really good women's MMA prospect. I mean, again, this isn't a channel that does like the significant strike and takedown percentages, breakdowns, like all that technical stuff, but almost 11 significant strikes landed per minute is absolutely insane, especially for women's MMA. I don't really think it's a matter of if, it's more so when in this fight. Carly Giudice is going to, I think, get a knockout here. And I got that at minus 130 on FanDuel. So, honestly, I thought the odds would be a little bit wider on that. I'm not going to lie to you. But minus 130 is still pretty good. That's going to be one of my plays. And then another play that I like is the under 2.5 rounds, which opened at minus 188. It's actually gotten a little better odds now. So, you might be able to bet that straight up if you agree with it. But I mean, you could look at maybe a round one finish. It's certainly not out of the picture, but who knows? Maybe Juliana Miller does land a takedown and holds her down for a little bit. Ultimately, I think Giudice is a good enough athlete. She'll get up fairly easily and just go back to, the barrage of strikes. So, yeah, I mean, if you caught it right away when these odds came out, you could maybe justify Carly Giudice money line parlay piece when it was minus 520, 530. But now at minus 900, I would not go that route. Me personally, I'm doing the KO TKO and then the under 2.5 rounds. I might use a bonus bet. I have one bonus bet left on FanDuel, and I've used most of them. My cat's trying to get into the frame here. I might save one for Carly Giudice by decision just because it is women's MMA, and the majority of the time you're going to decision. But it's only plus 200. It feels like plus 400, plus, 500 range. I could maybe sprinkle on that, but I have a hard time seeing her not knocking out Juliana Miller. Maybe not out cold, could be a TKO, but still. At the end of the day, even if it does go to scorecards, she should run through Juliana Miller. So maybe if you don't like the money line, you could take a fight line spread parlay piece. I saw her spread was minus 3.5 at minus 350. So maybe you could play that instead of the money line, because if it does go to the judge's scorecard, it's hard not seeing 30-27 across the board. All right, next fight, we got, I got a couple different apps pulled up here. I'll make sure I get the correct bout order. Yair Delval versus Jordan Levitt. Delval has really spiked. I think he opened at like right around minus 300, and now he is up to minus 440. I think a lot of money is coming in on him, and I think it's justified. Jordan Levitt's underrated in the sense that he doesn't look at all like a fighter, and he's a goofy-ass dude. But in reality, he's got a decent ground game. And, he's gotten knockouts before, but striking is definitely not his strong suit. So I don't want to completely write off Jordan Levitt, but I do think Yair Delval is going to be the much faster, stronger prospect here. And I think he's going to be fighting with a fire under his ass. If anyone who has watched UFC in, the recent months and has followed along would know that his most recent fight, not on his end, but on his opponent's end, was fixed when he fought Isaac Dolgarian. Dolgarian opened as a big favorite, like a couple hours or an hour before the fight, or it might have been more time than that, but right before the fight was taking place, a ton of money came in on Delval's side, specifically for him to win in round one. And once you know it, that by fight start, the odds closed at almost a pick'em. And once you know that Delval submits Dolgarian in round one, the FBI is investigating it. Dolgarian's cut from the UFC. So I think that probably scared a lot of people off from betting on him to start. And including myself, I was a little, wary about it. But just doing some more research and just, putting my thoughts to it, giving it some time, I just think he's going to have, an advantage in the striking. Levitt's good on the ground, but I think Delval's better. And again, I think he's going to come out here with something to prove, because I bet a lot of people aren't really giving him any credit for the last fight because of the circumstances. And I see him wanting to come out here and not only, win convincingly, but finish Jordan Leavitt. So a couple plays that I took in this, his money line when it first opened was minus 330, I believe. Let me make sure 340. So I used him as a parlay piece when he opened. He's up to minus 440 now, so, maybe not so much there. But the favorite play I have here, it is pretty chalk, but you can get Yadier Dalval by finish at minus right around 160, depending on what app you use. I got it minus 165 on FanDuel. Again, it's pretty chalk, but again, I think he's going to have the advantages pretty much everywhere in this fight. And if he does come out here with a fire under his ass and motivation to prove that it wasn't just because the other fighter that he was facing through the fight, that he is a legitimate prospect, comes out, gets a finish on Jordan Leavitt, and maybe puts some of those, wariness around him to bed a little bit. So I'm going to go Yadier Dalval by finish. I have his money line as a parlay piece in a couple plays when it was down to 340. Minus 440, you could still put that with a minus 250 or better leg and get some decent value. But yeah, I definitely think him to win by finish is the best play here. Next fight, we've got Phil Rowe and Jean-Paul Lobosniani. Lobosniani was originally slated to fight Austin Vanderford, and now Phil Rowe steps in. I have a lot of people that I've watched and listened to. This is Phil Rowe. He's one of the more popular dog picks this week. And I get it, because he seemingly always starts slow, but he's always in it. He's got a massive reach advantage. He's a seasoned vet. He's gotten finishes before. Actually, I think all of his wins are by finish. He's never won a decision. He's 0-5 in decisions, which is absolutely wild. And he's going up against a guy making his debut, so I naturally get it, like taking the veteran who all of his wins are by finish. He's only been knocked out once, so he's hard to finish, and he's going up against a debutant. So I get that, but I still think JPL is just going to have a significant advantage on the ground. Not to the level that Seok-Young Ko had against Phil Rowe. I mean, Ko, he's going to be a problem at welterweight, but he's really, really good at wrestling. He's not much of a finisher, but he's just great at keeping you on the ground, control time, and doing some ground and pound. Again, not a big finisher, but Ko is definitely levels above. Well, maybe not levels, but he's better than JPL on the ground. But I still think JPL holds a significant enough advantage on the ground to, if this fight goes there, which I almost guarantee it will, he's going to have an advantage there. Will he be able to hold down Rowe as well as Seok-Young Ko did? Probably not. But we've also seen JPL. I mean, he's had a nice little development in his striking game too. I mean, he's got this grappling base, and his dad was the striking coach for the Gracies, which is just a crazy, correlation there, because he's been getting knockouts on his regional scene and in his Contender Series fight. I don't think that's where it goes in this. I think his best path to victory, if it's not by sub, because again, he's a grappler at heart, I think he can win those first 2 rounds. And if he just survives a Phil Rowe 3rd round comeback, which is well within the cards, and I understand that's why a lot of people like Phil Rowe as a dog, I think JPL can get a 29-28 decision victory over a seasoned vet and a pretty good UFC debut win. So a couple things I played here. I don't think playing a minus 205 debut guy against a veteran like Phil Rowe is really valuable. I mean, it feels like minus 140 or better, then maybe you could just play him straight up. So I would say to avoid the money line. Me personally, that's, I more so favor taking the decision line, which is plus 310 right now. And then I also did an alternate double chance on DraftKings, which I like these bets. I've done them before, and they've been successful for me. I took the best path to victory, in my opinion, for both these guys. Phil Rowe by KO, TKO, or JPL by decision. That's plus 130. And then I took this fight over 2.5 rounds at plus 114 just because, again, Phil Rowe's never been submitted. I know there's a first time for everything. So I feel like JPL might have a hard time getting submission, let alone holding him down. If he does submit him early, it is what it is, and we get a look at a rising prospect. But if not, Phil Rowe can ride this out to the third round, and I don't see Phil Rowe finishing JPL early, even though I think that is his best path to victory, is a knockout. It's going to be in round 3, which is what he does seemingly every time he wins. It's like he's slow start, and then he comes back rounds 2 and round 3 and starts to do damage and get finishes. So I took the over 2.5 rounds. I'm not as confident in it as when I originally placed it, but I don't have a ton of stakes on it. Overall in this fight, I don't have a ton on it in general. But yeah, I'm going to take JPL on the decision line because the value at plus 310 I think is pretty good. That alternate double chance and then over 2.5 rounds. Because again, I think if there is a finish in this fight, it would be late. Either Phil Rowe's gassed and JPL finally gets a submission, or he does that classic third round knockout. So those are going to be my plays for JPL and Phil Rowe. Next fight, Ramiz Brahimaj and Punahele Soriano. This is pretty much a coin flip fight. I know a lot of people are split on this. There's some people that are riding the Brahimaj the hot streak. 3 straight fights as an underdog. Winning all of them, and then Punahele Soriano is just kind of a solid welterweight prospect that's also been on a good streak. I only have 2 bets for this fight. So as far as the amount of stakes I have on each of these respective fights, this is dead last for me. So I'm going to give kind of a quick breakdown here. I'm going to go Ramiz Brahimaj on the money line just because I see a Punahele Soriano double leg takedown. He puts his neck into a guillotine and gets choked out. We saw it when he fought Nikolai Veretinnikov. He landed a bunch of takedowns, and Veretinnikov probably had 4 or 5 guillotine attempts and just couldn't secure any of them. Brahimaj has a much, much better submission game, specifically that guillotine. So I just see it playing out like that. So I went Brahimaj on the money line. I got it at minus 135. I think it's down to like minus 125 or minus 120 right now. So a little bit of money coming in on Soriano's end. But this fight opened as Brahimaj as the underdog. So it went underdog, then he was up to like minus 135 or 140. Now he's back down closer to a pick'em. So again, it kind of shows you that the public's torn on it. Don't really blame them. I also took this fight to not go the distance as a parlay piece just because I think Brahimaj, like I said, could easily submit him with a guillotine. And Soriano's got some pop in the hands, and I could see maybe a TKO knockout here as well. But either way, I think both these guys coming on hot streaks want to keep their winning ways going and probably look to get finishes, especially with all that extra money they're getting out from the Paramount deal. So we go Brahimaj money line for a straight bet and fight to not go the distance at minus 260 for a parlay piece. Next fight, Jocelyn Edwards and Nora Cornell. I'm going to be quick on this one because I'm very, very confident in Jocelyn Edwards. I'll put that out there right now. This will be one of my, higher stakes fight. Money line parlay piece at I got it at minus 310 when it opened. Minus 290. And then on FanDuel it was minus 310. So, give or take minus 290 to minus 310. We'll call it minus 300, meet in the middle for a parlay piece. They have fought before. Jocelyn Edwards got robbed in a decision. It was in France. Anyone you listen to will tell you that Jocelyn Edwards won that fight unless you're watching like a French channel. And since then, I'm not even basing it off the fact that I think Jocelyn Edwards won the first fight. I'm basing it off of how much better each respective fighter has gotten since then. Nora Cornell has really shown nothing of improvement since then. She got absolutely manhandled by Carol Hosa, and I took a dog shot on Nora Cornell in that fight, and it aged like milk. I remember that specifically, just her. I think she got 10-8 in the first round, if I'm not mistaken. But, it was just a donation. Whereas Jocelyn Edwards has had, I believe, 3 straight finishes. since then. So, and it's been, again, just way different trajectories with these two fighters. Like Nora Cornell, she's tough to finish. I don't know if she's ever been finished before. It's not loading on my end, so I can't see their exact record. But, there we go. Has Nora Cornell? No, she's never been finished. So, obviously tough to finish her, and she kind of makes it a little bit, annoying to get in close with her, to land big shots, or, she doesn't really give up the back for submission attempts that much. But I think Jocelyn Edwards, I talked about Yadier Davel coming out with a fire under his ass. I think Jocelyn Edwards comes out with a fire under her ass in this fight, knowing that, she lost to Cornell in a bullshit decision the first fight. Let's not even let the judges' scorecards come into factor here. She's got a submission and 2 TKOs in 3 out of her last 4 fights since that first fight with Cornell. And Cornell, I don't think, has gotten any finishes since then. She knocked out Melissa Mullins. So, and she subbed Haley Cowan. Okay. But the point being is, I think, Edwards, she hasn't been fighting the best of competition, but you're still 3 straight finishes in women's MMA is something to behold. And I think she's just motivated on a better trajectory. And again, just based off that first fight and the improvements that she has shown since then, whereas Cornell's kind of stagnated, I'm going to go Jocelyn Edwards to win. And her to win by finish, I have a boost on this, but I think the original odds was plus 370, if I'm not mistaken. And then I sprinkled a bonus bet. This is my first bonus bet usage on her to win by sub at plus 750. Nora Cornell, I don't think is very good on the ground. I could very well see, either ground and pound, or if she flattens out, maybe gives up the neck and Jocelyn Edwards sinks in a rear naked choke or something like that. I'm pretty confident in Jocelyn Edwards. So yeah, that's going to be my pick for this fight. Moneyline parlay piece, but her to win by finish. And then a little bonus bet sprinkle on her to win by sub. Next fight, Alden Correa and Luis Gurule. I think the public's all over Correa. And I do think this fight's odds are a little wide. Right now, I believe Correa's minus 310 on FanDuel. Right around there. He opened at like minus 270 or 280. He's minus 330 now. So a little bit wide, and I think it's just the fact that he came in as a big underdog and finished his last fight, whereas Gurule has come into the UFC maybe with a little hype and has been kind of a dud. He got knocked out by Ode Osborne, which isn't really any sweat off your back, and then he lost to Jesus Aguilar in his last fight as a favorite. I'm pretty confident in Correa, but maybe not as much as others, just because, again, I think the odds are a little bit recency bias to him. But I call him at minus 285 to open just as a parlay piece. And I think the better odds on this is to snatch Alden Correa by finish. I got that at plus 185. He trains with Joshua Van, and he showed his striking, and he's got some grappling game. He's got submissions on his record, too. I think he's going to be a much bigger fighter than Luis Gurule in this fight. So whether he gets a knockout standing or, gets the grappling going and maybe takes the back of Luis Gurule, plus money on a big favorite that maybe has some recency bias to it, I don't think is a hateful play. And again, it's just he's got so much momentum, whereas Gurule's came in and he's been kind of a dud. So maybe you could say Luis Gurule's fighting with his back against the wall. I get that, but I don't know. I just think Correa, this is a home fight for him too in Texas because he trains with Josh Van. I think he's a legitimate prospect. Again, maybe not as confident in this as others are, but I'm still going to go on Correa here. I got his money line for a parlay piece, and then him to win by finish at plus 185. Want a little drink of water here before I talk about my favorite dog shot here. Ode Osborne and Alibi Idris, however you pronounce it. Right now, Ode Osborne is just plus 110, but I'll tell you straight out, I think I said this when I broke down. Maybe I said I was leaning toward taking Osborne, but I've gone ahead and straight up bet on O'Day Osborne at plus 134. Again, now that's down to plus 110, give or take. And I also took this fight to not go the distance at minus 140. For me, O'Day Osborne just shows so much finishing upside early on, and he's been in there with way, way higher level competition than, Idris or Idris. Now, I know he has not been winning all that much against a high level competition, but I just have a hard time, and I said this in my early leans, I have a hard time backing a guy who was like minus 400 or higher, whatever it was, on the Ultimate Fighter finale. And he almost got finished in round 1, but then goes out and gets choked out in round 2 by Joseph Morales. Now, Joseph Morales is a really good fighter, and he's a, very promising prospect at flyweight. But I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of Idris. I mean, this could be a case where if he loses, he's cut from the UFC. And again, O'Day Osborne just has such a high finishing upside. I mean, he almost finished Lazy Boy in their fight, had him hurt bad and knocked down in round 1. He knocked out Luis Garule, and then again, he had Steve Erceg on the ropes at bantamweight in their last fight. And I don't want to give a guy too much credit for losing, but still, he's fought much better competition. The finishing upside to me is way higher. My only worry is that if maybe he gasses out early, which he has shown to do, and doesn't get that finish, then maybe Idris could start to take over. And I believe Idris is in the same camp as Asul Almabayev, who has fought and finished O'Day Osborne before. So maybe he can get the grappling going, or he could knock out O'Day Osborne as well. But that's also why I took this fight to go the distance, to not go the distance at minus 140, because if O'Day Osborne doesn't finish him early, or even, early to mid-second round, there is that chance that Alibi Idris takes over and, maybe gets a ground and pound TKO or just straight up submits O'Day Osborne. But I'm going to take a dog shot here on O'Day. Again, fought the much higher comp, high finishing upside early. And again, I just have a hard time backing a guy who has a massive favorite on The Ultimate Fighter, got absolutely packed up and disposed of easily. So go O'Day Osborne at plus 134 and fight not to go the distance. Those are going to be 2 plays for me, but not a ton of stakes on it. So it won't really be a make or break fight for me. Next fight, another one I'm going to have very low stakes on because somebody's getting put away early, and I really couldn't tell you who it is. Carlos Leal and Chidi Njokuani. I think Carlos Leal opened at like close to minus 200. He's now down to minus 140 on FanDuel. I saw it got as low as minus 130 at some point. I do think Carlos Leal wins this fight just because I could see him get some grappling going here. But when you start to grapple, you put yourself at risk of being in the clinch, and those clinch elbows and knees from Chidi Njokuani could rain down on him, and he could get finished again. He got packed up by 47 million-year-old Muslim Salikov in his last fight. People saying he was juiced up, but still wasn't a good look. He was a massive favorite there. That was the first time he's ever gotten knocked out, so it'll be interesting to see how he comes back from that, the first time someone gets knocked out. Whereas Njokuani, I believe, has been knocked out like 3 or 4 times before. So 2 things for me in this. I think the fight ends by, KO. That's like minus 400 or so. I think on FanDuel it was like minus 300. So that could be a decent parlay piece. But I took the under 1.5 rounds at minus 160. That's good enough odds for me. I mean, it's pretty chalk, but again, either Leal is going to walk down Chidi Njokuani and finish him early, or maybe even get their grappling going and look for ground and pound, or Njokuani is going to be able to strike from the outside and get those, those Muay Thai knees and elbows going and find a knockout that way, because who knows, maybe all it takes is one knockout from 47 million-year-old Muslim Salikov and your chin is gone for Leal. I don't think that's the case. I did bet on him to win at minus 135, and I'm going to stick to that. I'm just not very high on Chidi. I mean, he's the much older fighter. He's 37. He's been finished a lot more. I mean, Leal, that was just the first time he's been knocked out. But again, I'm not confident in it at all. I do like the under 1.5 rounds and fight to end by knockout for a parlay piece. But other than that, I'm not going to have a ton on this fight. We'll just see what happens. Last fight on the this might be the main card opener. Hold on. I don't know if this is the accurate bout order. You never know with some of these sites. But anyway, Zach Reese and Michel Pereira, or Pereira, however you pronounce it. I'm going to go Zach Reese on a dog shot. I said this when I initially looked at this fight. I don't love it because Zach Reese has fought pretty much the bottom of the barrel competition in the UFC. Whereas Michel Pereira, before he got his soul taken by Fluffy Hernandez, who's on the main event in this card, he was looking like one of the more promising prospects. He was originally at welterweight, and then he moved up to middleweight. And since then, he's just looked like absolute shit. He put on one of the worst performances ever against Abus Magomedov, and then he got knocked out in 43 seconds against Kyle Dawkins. Zach Reese, on the other hand, is on more of an upward trajectory. He's on a 2-fight win streak, granted against Dusko Todorovic and Jackson McVeigh, where McVeigh had him kind of on the ropes early, but then he rallied and got a sub in the second round. The fight before that, he kicks Cedricus Dumas in the nuts. I'm going to be kind of quick with this. It's just like, how can you bet on Michel Pereira after watching his recent performances and just where he's at in his UFC career? I would say that outweighs the point of how can you bet on Zach Reese. If you're getting him at plus money against this version of Michel Pereira, I think it's worth a shot. But what I am more confident in this fight is the fight to go under 1.5 rounds. That's been pretty much a given for both of these fighters in their most recent fights. And again, I think it covers if Michel Pereira comes out here and throws some crazy shit and catches Zach Reese like he's very live to do, that cashes it that way. If he doesn't catch Zach Reese and is completely gassed in round 2, Zach Reese could probably finish it pretty early in round 2, either with a TKO, or maybe he catches the neck of Michel Pereira and ends him that way. So I'm going to take a dog shot on Zach Reese at plus 122 and the under 1.5 rounds. Here's a cat cameo, different cat from last time. Under 1.5 rounds, I got a minus 135. Next fight, I'm going to have to be kind of quick with this one because the fighter props for the books that I use still aren't out other than Moneyline. Josiah Harrell and Jacoby Smith. Jacoby Smith right now, minus 310. I got him at minus 298 for the Moneyline. When I first saw this fight, because Smith was supposed to fight Seokyoung Ko, and then Ko had to pull out, I believe, because of a rib injury, Josiah Harrell steps in, and ESPN had him at 7-0. They didn't have his last 4 fights recorded, so they didn't have anything recorded on him since 2023. So I'm thinking, this guy hasn't fought in 2 years, almost 3. He's going, Jacoby Smith's going to be a minus 10,000 favorite, or like a Javid Basharat case where he's like minus 750. And then some more information came out on Josiah Harrell. He was supposed to be in the UFC, like 2 or 3 years ago to fight, or it might have been less than that. He was supposed to fight JDM, and then they found that he had a tumor or something in his brain. He had to get surgery on it. And since then, he's been on the regional scene. He fights out of Groveport or Grove City, right near Columbus, Ohio, where I'm at. So, I've probably been in the same room as this guy and not even known it. So shout out, Ohio, Columbus. I'm not from here, but I live here. And actually, I was at a bar this past weekend, and I was talking to this guy, and he was asking me, what sports and stuff I like. And I was like, yeah, football. And then I've really been into UFC, the last couple of years, and it's became, my second favorite sport. And he's like, oh, yeah, I know a guy. He's, one of my buddies. He's fighting on the upcoming card. I'm like, oh, no shit. Who is it? He's like, it's Josiah Harrell. I was like, yeah, he's taking that fight on short notice against Jacoby Smith. Anyway, that was a cool experience. And it just goes to show you, for some of these lower weight classes, you could be in the same room with an absolute killer and have no idea. You could be in the room with a guy that fights at 125, and he just look like a normal ass dude, but in reality, he could kill you 12 different ways. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I think Jacoby Smith wins this fight, and there is a good chance that he ends it early if he lands something big in round 1. But the main play I'm going to have for this fight, and again, it's hard telling how much I'll have on it or anything like that because I don't have odds yet. But I'm going to take Jacoby Smith by decision, and I imagine it's going to be close to, if not more than plus odds, because he's been finishing everyone in the UFC. And, again, he's taking a short notice fight against a guy who's making his UFC debut. So you got this super hyped up prospect, probably projected to get a finish. So I'll see what the decision odds are. But I'm also going to take Josiah Harrell on the spread here because watching this guy's, tape from the regional scene and seeing, his record and just the fact that he was going to fight JDM, like you can tell the UFC's had their eye on this guy and been high on him. And, obviously he had the freak, brain incident, but 4-0 since then. He's got a ton of finishes. He's never been finished before. And, Jacoby Smith in his fight against Nico Price, he was really gassed in that second round after not getting Nico Price out of there in the first. Ultimately, he was able to, choke out Nico Price. But, again, Nico Price is kind of a shell of himself nowadays. We just saw him get knocked out standing by Nikolai Varatinikov. So there's a channel I watch called Nolan Knows MMA that said he bet on, I don't know what book he uses, but he had Josiah Harrell plus 3.5 spread at plus money. And I really like that because I think if he survives the early onslaught from Jacoby Smith, I really see him winning round 3 out of high clip, especially if Jacoby Smith has cardio issues like he showed in that Nico Price fight. If that's the case, Josiah Harrell could easily win round 3 and maybe even make a comeback and make it interesting. So I want to go Jacoby Smith to win, but the bets, I'm going to go him to win by decision because, again, I don't know for sure yet, but I anticipate there'll be decent odds. And I'm going to go Josiah Harrell. Maybe it's Ohio bias or whatever, but I'm going to take the muscle hamster. He's a 5'7" welterweight, so he's not going to be easy to wrestle up, which is Jacoby Smith's base. I'm going to take him on a spread, and I really hope, he's able to continue to stay healthy and get some more shots here in the UFC. Either way, this should be a fun fight between two 11-0 prospects at welterweight. I'm going to go Jacoby Smith, but the two bets will be him by decision and Josiah Harrell spread. So if he does get a knockout, I'm kind of fucked, but I think the muscle hamster will survive. Next fight, Ante Delija versus Sergey Spivak. Pretty easy pick for me here. I'm going to go Ante Delija by knockout. I just think Sergey Spivak at this point in his career is pretty shit. I know Ante Delija got knocked out by Waldo Cortez Acosta in his last fight, but he was coming off an adrenaline dump from thinking that he had knocked out Waldo Cortez Acosta. It was a really strange sequence where video replay showed that he eye-poked Waldo, and so the knockout got overturned. They kept fighting, and then Waldo knocked out Ante Delija. I don't see anything like that happening in this fight. In fact, I see Delija legitimately getting a first-round knockout here. Again, I just think Spivak's pretty shit at this point, to be honest with you. There's going to be a high finishing upside difference, and especially early on, Delija is going to come out fast, or at least I'm expecting him to. And if he gets Spivak knocked down, I think this fight ends pretty quickly. Now, there is that chance if he doesn't get it done in the first round, maybe he could gas out and Spivak could land a takedown and either submit or ground and pound him. We've seen, Delia's been finished via ground and pound before. In fact, all of the ways he's lost by finish have all been by knockout TKO. So a couple plays here. I did Ante Delija by knockout at plus 110. I'm honestly surprised. His money line's like minus 150 or something now. I think he opened around like minus 170, 175. And now some money's come in on Spivak. But I still thought his KO TKO odds would be a little bit wider, but plus money on that. I took the under 1.5 rounds just because, again, I see Delija finishing this in round 1 at a high clip. But if Spivak does survive into round 2, and Delia's got some gas left, he could finish early then. Or who knows, maybe he could get a takedown and a submission or ground and pound if Delia's completely gassed. So took those two. And then I have fight to end by knockout TKO at minus 150. That's going to be my 3 plays there. But really, really favor Delija in this spot. Next fight, Melky Costa and Dan 100K Ige now. It's not 50K, 100K Ige. I'm going to go Melky Costa by decision, but I don't really love it. The decision line I got at minus 130. But I'm not going to write off Dan Ige here. Dan Ige's never been finished. I know there's a first time for everything, and Melky Costa just knocked out a guy for the first time in his opponent's career when he knocked out Morgan Charrier. So I don't want to write that off, but I see this going to his decision at a high clip. And if it does, Dan Ige is going to get those moments. He's not much of a minute winner, but he is, big moments and like things that can sway around winner. And he's always live for a knockout if this fight stays in boxing range. If Melky Costa keeps it at kicking range, I think he'll win this pretty convincingly 29-28. But I'm really not writing off Dan Ige for a comeback, either knockout victory or, if one of the rounds is close and Melky Costa's gassed by the end of the fight. I mean, we could see a split decision Ige win. So, Costa's a rising prospect. He won 4 times last year. I mean, he's super active. Dan Ige, people love him. He's a fun fighter. He's been in good scraps. This is a perfect gatekeeper versus rising prospect matchup. I'm going to take the prospect Costa. Again, decision at minus 130. But I'm going to take Dan Ige. I did an alt spread just to give myself a little bit more cushion. Plus 7.5 was minus 300. So that means it just goes. He needs one judge to see him win a single round. 30-27, 30-27, 29-28 would cover it. Or again, 29-28 across the board. Or again, a split decision cashes this easily. So my 2 plays here. I'm not super confident in Costa to win, but I do see that happening more often than not because I think Ige's best chance, because I don't see him as a very good minute winner, is to catch Costa with a big shot, which is very possible. And if he does that and Costa is gassed, if it doesn't finish him, at the very least, I see it as winning him around towards the end, which is why I'm going to go Ige on the spread, because if he does knock him out, that covers it regardless. But if it does enough for him to win just one round, we're good there. So, Melky Costa by decision at minus 130 and Dan Ige plus 7.5 alt spread parlay piece. Co-main event, Jeff Neal and Uros Medic. I said this in my early leans. I'm going Jeff Neal by knockout here. It's minus 120. I think that's beautiful value. Maybe there's a chance he comes out and wrestles Uros Medic, who's going to probably come out like a bat out of hell. Jeff Neal does have a submission win at the UFC level, but the guy's nickname's Hands of Steel, all right? Somebody's getting knocked out here, and it's going to be early. And I said this in my early breakdown. I know Jeff Neal's lost to these guys, but he's fought the absolute best at welterweight. You're talking Ian Gary, Shavkat Rachmanov. He fought an old Artie, Rafael Dos Anjos, and Dos Anjos hurt his leg in that fight. But, he fought Stephen Thompson when he was more towards his prime, Neil Magny, Santiago Ponzinibbio. And he just most recently fought Carlos Prates, who's probably the most dangerous striker, I would say, in the world at this point, or if not the most dangerous, certainly one of. So, and then Uros Medic, he's fighting like Gilbert Medina or Urbina, whatever his last name was, and he got dropped by him. He came back and knocked him out, but and then he beat Muslim Salikov, who, yes, knocked out Carlos Leal as a big underdog, but Salikov maybe was juiced to the gills in that fight against Leal. And he's like 43. So I just don't rate Medic's wins very highly. Now, again, there's a chance that Jeff Neal's past his prime and the last knockout against Prates really affected his chin, and he could be washed. So there's a couple plays I took here. Again, Jeff Neal by knockout, because I'm going to favor the experience. It's in Texas for him. And this is just such a major step down in competition for him. That's minus 120. The under 1.5 is up to around minus 200 right now, but I got it at minus 180 for a parlay piece. But I did use a bonus bet here on Uros Medic by knockout in round 1 at plus 500, because, again, I think if he wins this fight, it's by catching Jeff Neal in round 1. If it gets past the first 2.5 minutes, I think Neal takes over and gets a knockout pretty easily. But I'm going to cover that. You could call it a hedge, whatever. I'm going to cover that with plus 500 on a bonus bet. I think that's really good value. So if Medic does get that done, I'll be sad that Jeff Neal lost because I'll have ultimately more money on him to win, specifically by knockout, than anything. But at least we're covering, a very volatile fighter, a very volatile fight that could end very quickly. Again, plus 500 for Medic to win by knockout in round 1 was certainly worth a bonus bet for me. But yeah, I'm going to go Jeff Neal by knockout, and the under 1.5 rounds is my real cash wagers on that. So, all right, main event. When this fight first, not even when it got announced, but when it got closer to fight week, I was a lot more confident in Fluffy Hernandez than what I am now. I still think he wins. I think he does it by decision. I got that at plus 150. But I'm going to give some respect to the former champ here. I took his spread at plus 9.5, which in a 5-round fight, he just needs to win 1, and it'd be 49-46 across the board. So that would cover it. But, I've listened to a lot of people give their takes on this fight, and I agree with the sentiment that I think Sean Strickland is a little underrated in this spot, in that all he has done is fought the absolute best of the best in this division for the past, 4 or 5 years. I mean, he's been in a ton of 5-round fights, been in multiple title fights, has won a world championship, and he's hard to finish unless your name is Alex Pereira. And yeah, Fluffy's going to apply constant pressure, and he's going to apply constant submission attempts. So there is a chance that him to win by decision and, the Sean Strickland spread ages poorly, but Strickland's got pretty underrated jiu-jitsu. Again, he's going to jab and teep Fluffy's body constantly, which might back off some of that pressure a little bit. I still think Fluffy wins it because he's on a crazy hot streak, and Sean Strickland maybe is past his prime a little bit, whereas Fluffy Hernandez is right there. But when these lines first came out, I was really all on Fluffy, not really giving Sean Strickland much love. But I'll show some respect to the former champ, and I see this going to decision more times than not. And if Strickland does end up winning the fight, that's how it's going to go. He's not going to knock out, and he's certainly not going to submit Fluffy. So, again, my plays here, Fluffy by decision. I did use him as a parlay piece in a couple bets. His money line was minus 285, which was good enough for me. I think it's actually up to minus 310 now on certain sites, but still right around that minus 290 to 310 range. But yeah, him by decision is plus money, which I think is good. I took the fight to go the distance at minus 110 because I think, that Strickland's easily his best path to victory. But I also think it's the most realistic way that Fluffy gets a win here, because even though I think he's going to be relentless with the takedowns and the weaponized cardio, I still have a hard time seeing him being able to submit Sean Strickland. So fight to go the distance, and then again, Sean Strickland at plus 9.5 on the spread. All he's got to do is win 1 round. And I think early on would be his best chance to do it when he's fresh. I mean, both these guys have extremely good cardio. Fluffy's is probably slightly better because I don't think anyone at this weight class in the world has better cardio than he does. But, Strickland's right up there. So early on, while they're both fresh, maybe Strickland has a good round of jabbing and front kicks to the body where he wins the round, and then if Fluffy takes over from then on, as long as he doesn't get finished, we cash on all fronts here. So I'm going to go Fluffy by decision, either 49-46 or 48-47. But yeah, I'm going to show a little bit respect to the former champ. So that'll do it for my main card picks. I want to do 2 more things here for this video that I didn't do for the Bautista and Oliveira. First, I'm going to have all these fights ranked in confidence and stakes for the betting that I have. Again, just kind of be more transparent which fights I have more stakes on. So 1 through 14, I'm going to put these in order. The ones at the top will be the ones I'm most confident with my bets on and I'll have more stakes on, or maybe I'm more confident in the fighter. And the ones toward the bottom are going to be the ones where I don't have a ton of stakes on them. I'm not confident as much in my picks. So I'll put those here. And again, it's not necessarily who I think is going to win. That could be a whole different thing we could do. Is just, that's a thing that a guy I follow, Hey Jive Picks, he does that. He just ranks all the straight up fighters that he thinks are going to win, not bets, but who he thinks are going to win. He ranks those. But here, this will be the fights that I have the bigger stakes on and which ones I don't. And then I'm going to have I do this every card. One bet for every fight, put them all into a parlay, and then I'll give the odds. It's going to, I think when I drew it up earlier, it was like, if you're just putting $1 on it, it'll win like $1,400. So if you put $10 down on that, you'd win 14,000. If you put 100 on it, you win 140 grand. For these sprinkles, I never do more than like $5 or bonus bets. So I'll put that here. Again, it's just one bet from every fight. Sometimes it's just a fighter prop. Sometimes it's a round prop or whatever it may be. One from every fight, parlay them all together, get some ridiculous odds, put $1 or $2 on it, and maybe you'll win, $1,000+ So just a little fun thing I do for all the cards. But anyway, that'll do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed another breakdown. And just like on Bautista Oliveira, I'll put this out on Friday, watch the card, Saturday, and then probably Monday or Tuesday next week we'll do a recap. All right, so that'll do it for me. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time when we recap UFC Houston.